If you rely on SNAP benefits, you may have heard a lot of alarming headlines lately about funding issues and potential budget cuts. But what's really happening and what does this mean for you? Let's cut through the noise and have a calm, straightforward discussion about what's going on and what it might mean for your benefits. But before we dive into all those details, I want to hear from you. Are you worried about potential changes to SNAP this year? Yes or no? Just let me know in the comments. So here's what's happening. Yesterday, the USDA released a press statement criticizing how SNAP benefits were handled under the previous administration. The statement promised to fix what they called this egregious action, but they didn't really provide any specifics on what that action was. Instead, the press release just linked to a new report from the Government Accountability Office, or GAO. This report highlighted an issue with SNAP funding, not fraud, not misuse, just an accounting issue with how the funds were recorded. So here's the situation in simple terms. Every year, the government gives the USDA funding to distribute those SNAP benefits. Before September 19th of 2023, they recorded spending daily based on how much money was actually sent to households. But on that day, they changed their accounting method, using fiscal year 2023 money to prepay for October 2024 because the fiscal year always changes on October 1st. Now, the GAO says that this was an accounting error because the money should have been recorded in the correct fiscal year. There's nothing in the documentation to back this next bit up, but I personally suspect that this change was made on September 19th because there was a risk that the government would shut down on October 1st that year. It's possible that the prior USDA officials decided to fund those benefits in advance to make sure that they would be paid out on time, even if the government shut down. But regardless of why it happened, the fact is that the Government Accountability Office said this is an accounting error, and that it violates the recording statute, bona fide need statute, and the Anti-Deficiency Act. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean for you? Well, it does not mean that your SNAP is at risk. This is not fraud or a policy change. This is a technical budget issue, not a sign that money was stolen or misused. The USDA may need to do some paperwork to correct the mistake, and if they didn't have enough funds in the 2024 budget to fix it, they could potentially face financial penalties, but there's no direct threat to your benefits at this moment from this report. The GAO report doesn't even mention any impact to people who receive SNAP. However, that does not mean that this report is completely harmless. Let's talk about why it might matter. Because on the same day the GAO report was published, House Republicans introduced a budget resolution that includes a $230 billion cut to agriculture-related spending over the next 10 years. Now remember, it's the United States Department of Agriculture that oversees critical food programs like SNAP, WIC, and others. These lawmakers haven't outlined exactly how they plan to achieve those savings yet, but given that the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, is the largest part of the USDA budget, there's a very real possibility that some of those cuts could affect food assistance. Now, before you panic, though, let's talk about what they've actually said so far. Lawmakers have not proposed directly slashing benefits. Instead, they've emphasized that their focus will be on reducing waste, fraud, and improper payments. They've also suggested potential changes like stricter work requirements for SNAP recipients and limiting how much benefits can increase in the future. Honestly, if they could just stop the theft, I think that would go a long way. But if a lot of these changes sound familiar, it's because similar policies have been debated over the last few years as part of the Farm Bill negotiations. Some lawmakers want to expand work requirements for adults without dependents, which could make it harder for some people to qualify for benefits. Others are considering changing the Thrifty Food Plan, which determines how much money SNAP holds receive each month. If those changes go through, future benefit increases could be smaller, even if food prices continue to rise. And of course, SNAP isn't the only program facing potential changes either. The same budget resolution includes an even bigger reduction, around $880 billion, in potential cuts to Medicaid over the next decade. This could mean stricter eligibility rules, work requirements for able-bodied adults, and adjustments to how states receive their funding, which could make it harder for some people to stay covered. So while nothing has changed yet, and there's no immediate threat right now to your benefits, This budget resolution does set the stage for future cuts that could make it more difficult to qualify for food assistance and health care. Now, we're using very careful language here. We're saying may, could, because nothing is set in stone yet. And I know this is terrifying because these benefits are absolutely critical. They help people stay fed and healthy. This isn't just about numbers on a page. It's real support that people really rely on every day. This is a big deal, and I don't want to minimize that at all. However, with so much rampant speculation and uncertainty out there, I want to make sure that we keep this in perspective. Stress can be really harmful right now, and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by worst-case scenarios when we don't have all the facts yet. So let's take a step back, breathe, and look at what we do know. And this is where the GAO report we just talked about comes back into play. While the report does not suggest cutting SNAP and it does not accuse anyone of wrongdoing, it could be used to justify changes to the way that the program is administered. If lawmakers claim that the USDA mismanaged funds, they could push for stricter oversight, new rules on how funds are distributed, or other administrative changes that make accessing benefits more complicated. So, what can you do? First, don't panic. Your benefits are not being cut today. The budget proposal is still just a proposal, and nothing is for sure yet. But it's always a good idea to stay informed and engaged so that you know what's happening before those decisions are made. Second, keep an eye on the Agriculture Committee in the House of Representatives. Right now, this budget resolution is just a guideline. It's not a law, and nothing is set in stone. If this somehow does become a thing, then it will be the Agriculture Committee who will be responsible for deciding how to meet that $230 billion cut target. They haven't determined where those cuts will come from yet, so we don't even know if or how SNAP might be affected. And finally, if you want to protect your benefits, make sure your voice is heard. Reach out to your representatives, share your concerns, and stay involved in the conversation. We'll be following this closely, and we'll keep you updated on any new developments. So be sure to subscribe to this channel and visit lowincomerelief.com for the latest updates on SNAP, Medicaid, and other essential programs.